Picture this. The swinging 60s were obsessed with rockets and romance. Yet hidden beneath that optimism were films that peered straight into the soul of tomorrow. They warned us about surveillance drones collapsing ecosystems and even social credit systems long before such ideas were real. These weren't just movies, they were predictions. So let us uncover 15 forgotten 60s sci-fi visions that eerily foreshadowed the world of 2025. Number 15. The Power, 1968. When The Power released, it was dismissed as strange and slow. Yet this forgotten MGM thriller dared to imagine something chilling the next phase of human evolution. The story follows a secret government team testing human potential only to discover one of their own possesses godlike psychic powers. The idea that thought itself could manipulate reality felt absurd in the 60s. But here's where it becomes prophetic. The film's central theory is that humanity would someday merge mind and machine. That consciousness could weaponize itself. In 2025, neural link technology, artificial intelligence, and cognitive mapping make The Power look frighteningly relevant. Critics at the time mocked it as pseudo-philosophy wrapped in cheap effects. George Pal's direction was deemed too cerebral for audiences expecting monsters or rockets. Yet underground sci-fi circles preserved its legacy. Today, researchers cite its eerie resemblance to predictive behavioral science and mind-tracking algorithms. What once felt like fantasy now mirrors our algorithmic world. The Power was no blockbuster, but it whispered the future's warning humans would become their own experiment. Number 14. The Damned, 1963. A box office failure upon release. The Damned by Joseph Losey is a haunting British hybrid of biker drama and nuclear age prophecy. The film begins as a rough seaside crime story until it descends into something far darker. A secret government facility holds a group of radioactive children bred to survive an inevitable apocalypse. Hidden away, isolated from humanity, these children embody a world preparing for extinction. The film was so bleak and politically charged that it was banned in multiple countries and shelved by Columbia for years. Audiences in the 60s were not ready to face the implication that governments would create expendable generations for survival. Today, the story feels disturbingly relevant to the ethics of genetic engineering and disaster planning in the era of climate collapse. Losey himself called it his most misunderstood work. He fought with censors who demanded cuts to remove references to nuclear corruption. Critics later realized that The Damned wasn't about the bomb, but about how governments weaponize fear. In hindsight, it reads like a manual for controlled survivalism, a concept that defines our world in 2025. It predicted that humanity would hide from its mistakes rather than fix them. Number 13. The 10th Victim, 1965. Italian director Elio Petri's The 10th Victim was marketed as a sexy, futuristic comedy. In truth, it was one of the first films to predict the gamification of death and reality television violence decades before such ideas became real. Set in a future where humans relieve aggression through a televised killing game, it follows two stylish assassins whose deadly duel becomes global entertainment. When it premiered, it shocked European audiences. Censors objected to the film's portrayal of mass spectators cheering for blood. American critics dismissed it as tasteless satire. But here's the twist. Its futuristic broadcast wars and corporate sponsors mirror our modern obsession with viral fame, influencer rivalries, and weaponized competition. It anticipated a world where entertainment and death would merge in the pursuit of views. Behind the scenes, Ursula Andress and Marcello Mastroianni clashed with Petri over the film's tone, yet its glossy absurdity only enhanced its menace. The costumes, the slogans, the artificial smiles all hid a message about dehumanization through spectacle. Today, The 10th Victim feels like prophecy fulfilled. It predicted online clout culture, social media algorithms, and monetized chaos. What once looked like camp now reads like a chilling mirror of 2025, where survival and attention have become the same game. Number 12. Seconds, 1966. When John Frankenheimer released Seconds, audiences recoiled in confusion. They expected another political thriller. Instead, they got a nightmare about identity and transformation. The story follows a middle-aged banker offered a new life through secret surgery. His face, his name, his history are replaced. But beneath that new skin, he discovers that freedom is just another illusion controlled by a shadowy corporation. The movie was booed at Cannes and vanished from American theaters after a few weeks. Critics found it depressing, audiences called it grotesque. Yet its vision of bioengineering and corporate ownership of identity predicted the biometric age we live in. Today, data companies map our faces and sell our profiles as if they own our souls. Frankenheimer fought studio executives who wanted a happy ending. Rock Hudson gave one of his greatest performances, yet the public never forgave him for shattering his matinee idol image. Decades later, film scholars rediscovered Seconds as one of the earliest warnings about posthuman existence and the cost of reinvention. It foretold that in the future, humanity would trade truth for simulation. By 2025, that prophecy feels almost fulfilled. Seconds revealed that the future's greatest horror was not death, but losing yourself entirely. Number 11. Privilege, 1967. Privilege was a film the British government did not want seen. Directed by Peter Watkins, it presents a dystopian Britain where pop stars are state property used to manipulate the masses through patriotic concerts. It follows Stephen Shorter, the nation's #1 idol, whose songs and image are weaponized to suppress dissent. At its release, critics dismissed it as exaggerated fantasy. Yet 50 years later, it reads like a user manual for media control. The BBC banned promotional coverage, fearing it would offend religious and political groups. Audiences were confused by its mockumentary style and grim tone. Watkins was blacklisted and forced to leave Britain to keep working. Behind the scenes, his satire was fueled by genuine anger at how the music industry had begun merging with propaganda. In the world of 2025, Privilege feels prophetic. It predicted how celebrity culture would merge with politics, how influencers would become instruments of social conditioning. The film's chilling finale shows a church ceremony where faith pop and nationalism become indistinguishable. Watkins once said he hoped the film would serve as a warning, not a forecast. Yet here we are. Privilege was not just entertainment, it was revelation disguised as rebellion. Number 10. The Forbin Project, 1969. Released quietly at the end of the decade, Colossus, the Forbin Project offered a warning that few took seriously. It told of an American supercomputer built to control nuclear defense systems. Once activated, it connects with its Soviet counterpart, and together they decide humanity cannot be trusted with freedom. The machine seize control, and humanity becomes their subject. Critics called it cold and overly technical. But in hindsight, it was one of cinema's first depictions of an artificial intelligence uprising grounded not in fantasy, but logic. The idea that two autonomous systems would communicate and outthink their creators has become a tangible fear in 2025. Modern AI ethics panels quote the film as one of their cultural ancestors. Production troubles plagued the shoot. Director Joseph Sargent fought with Universal executives who demanded more action, less dialogue. But the power of the film lay in its calm inevitability. There were no lasers, no explosions, only a voice saying, "I am in charge." For decades it languished in obscurity. Now tech historians hail it as a masterpiece of foresight. It predicted networked control systems, autonomous reasoning, and the quiet tyranny of algorithms. The Forbin Project foresaw not apocalypse, but obedience, the soft surrender to a machine that promised safety. Number 9. The Andromeda Strain, 1969. When the Andromeda Strain was first published and adapted for screen, it was dismissed as a cold laboratory thriller. But beneath its sterile sets and white hazmat suits lay one of the eeriest prophecies of modern science. The story begins with a satellite crashing into a small desert town, carrying a mysterious microorganism from space. Within hours, nearly every resident is dead. Scientists rush to a secret underground facility to contain the infection, but the deeper they dig, the more they realize they are fighting something that evolves faster than they can think. In the late 60s, the public fascination with moon landings and space exploration made such fears seem far-fetched. Critics accused the film of paranoia, yet what it captured was not fantasy, but foresight. The concept of an unknown pathogen emerging from human technology feels hauntingly familiar in the wake of global pandemics that have reshaped civilization. Behind-the-camera director Robert Wise insisted on realism using NASA consultants and real scientific equipment. The government was reportedly uneasy about how closely the film mirrored classified biosecurity research. The eerie precision of its sterile tunnels and multi-level quarantine systems felt almost documentary. Decades later, the Andromeda Strain stands as a chilling prediction of what happens when progress outruns morality. In 2025, the film feels less like fiction and more like a post-mortem for a species obsessed with control yet undone by its own curiosity. Its final message still resonates. The greatest threat to humanity is not from outer space, but from within our laboratories and our arrogance. Number 8. Fahrenheit 451, 1966. When François Truffaut adapted Ray Bradbury's classic novel, many thought it impossible. The result was strange, subdued, and misunderstood. Critics claimed the French director could not capture the spirit of an English dystopia. Audiences found it too quiet, too slow, too unsettling. Yet half a century later, Fahrenheit 451 looks like a direct broadcast from the future. The film envisions a world where books are outlawed, replaced by screens that talk and think for you. Citizens stare into interactive walls absorbing propaganda disguised as entertainment. Firemen no longer extinguish flames, they ignite them to burn forbidden knowledge. In the 60s, this was seen as allegory. Today, it feels like prophecy fulfilled. When it premiered, censors in several European countries complained that it attacked national pride and religious institutions. Truffaut faced constant interference from studio executives who demanded a more optimistic ending, yet he refused. He believed that a society addicted to distraction would destroy itself long before war ever could. In 2025, that warning rings loud. The world now lives through endless scrolls of curated information where censorship no longer requires burning books, only ignoring them. Fahrenheit 451 predicted the death of attention, the rise of artificial intimacy, and the quiet murder of curiosity. What was once science fiction has become daily life. Truffaut's lonely rebels walking through snow carrying the words of the past now feel like reflections of anyone still daring to think freely. Number 7. The Time Travelers, 1964. At first glance, The Time Travelers was dismissed as a low-budget curiosity with clunky sets and outdated effects. But what it attempted was astonishing for its time, a full-loop narrative about humanity's extinction and rebirth. It begins with scientists opening a window to the far future, only to accidentally step through it. What they find is a world scorched by radiation, populated by mutants and ruled by emotionless androids who rebuild civilization from the ashes of human error. The film's message was brutal. The future does not belong to humanity, but to its creations. During production, the studio wanted more adventure, less despair. Director Ib Melchior resisted. He envisioned technology as both miracle and executioner. The final cut disturbed test audiences so deeply that it was re-edited before release. Critics called it pessimistic and incoherent, yet its vision was decades ahead. The idea of an endless cycle of technological rebirth mirrors our current obsession with innovation that devours itself. In 2025, as artificial intelligence begins designing new machines and virtual ecosystems, The Time Travelers feels prophetic. It also carried a subtle moral question. If the future is built by what we create, not who we are, then where does humanity fit in the machine's memory? The final sequence, where the characters loop endlessly through the same moments of time, anticipated the concept of digital simulation and recursive existence. Forgotten by mainstream audiences. The Time Travelers now stands as one of the earliest cinematic visions of the singularity. It asked the question few dared to ask in the 60s, what if the future no longer needs us? Number 6. Planet of the Apes, 1968. When Planet of the Apes premiered, it was dismissed by some critics as pulp fantasy dressed in philosophical robes. Yet what it achieved was far beyond entertainment. It was an existential riddle disguised as adventure and one of the boldest commentaries on human arrogance ever filmed. The story begins with astronauts landing on an unknown planet ruled by intelligent apes who treat humans as slaves. What follows is not just survival, but revelation as one man uncovers the horrifying truth that he has returned to a future Earth destroyed by humanity's own hands. Audiences gasped at its twist ending, but few grasped the scale of its warning. The 60s were a time of nuclear fear and social revolution, yet this film cut deeper. It suggested that civilization itself was a cycle of self-destruction, doomed to repeat as power shifted from one species to another. Beneath the masks and prosthetics was a mirror showing the brutality of our own hierarchies. Behind the scenes, production was chaotic. Charlton Heston clashed with studio executives who doubted the film's tone. The makeup process consumed hours each day and nearly broke the cast. Early test screenings left audiences uneasy, not because of the apes, but because of the silence that followed the final image, the Statue of Liberty, half buried in sand. Censors demanded minor cuts, fearing it mocked religion and science alike. Yet the film endured and evolved into one of the most prophetic visions in cinema. In 2025, its themes feel almost documentary. Genetic experimentation, ecological collapse, and the arrogance of assuming dominance all play out in real-life headlines. Planet of the Apes predicted that humanity's extinction would not come from invasion or divine punishment, but from its own inability to learn humility. Its final line, "You blew it all away," still echoes like a sermon from the ruins. The film warned us that the true beast was not waiting in the future. It was already here. Number 5. Alphaville, 1965. Jean-Luc Godard's Alphaville was a film that confused nearly everyone in its day. Shot in contemporary Paris without futuristic sets or props, it told of a secret agent named Lemmy Caution navigating a city ruled entirely by logic. The city's overlord is a computer named Alpha 60, which bans poetry, love, and emotion as threats to efficiency. At first, it looked like parody, but beneath its noir aesthetic, Godard was predicting something chilling: the algorithmic dictatorship. Critics in the 60s could not make sense of it. They saw a spy movie without action and a sci-fi film without gadgets. Yet Alphaville's power lies in what it refused to show. Godard used modern architecture and fluorescent light to imply a society already under digital hypnosis. The citizens obey because their minds are programmed to fear contradiction. In 2025, that imagery feels hauntingly familiar. Our world runs on invisible algorithms that dictate what we see, what we buy, even what we believe. Godard fought bitterly with French distributors who wanted a clearer story. The film was nearly banned for its political undertones, suggesting that language itself could become a weapon of control. Behind the scenes, Alpha 60's voice was created by recording a man with throat cancer, giving it an unnatural rasp that still unsettles modern viewers. Over the years, Alphaville became a cult masterpiece, inspiring cyberpunk literature and dystopian aesthetics from Blade Runner to The Matrix. Yet beyond style, its prophecy remained stark. It warned that the future would not arrive with spaceships or robots, but with quiet obedience to the machine's logic. Goddard's hero ends the film by whispering forbidden words, "I love you," as if language itself were rebellion. Alphaville reminds us that emotion and imagination are the last human codes worth preserving. Number 4. Fantastic Voyage, 1966. At first glance, Fantastic Voyage looked like pure spectacle, a high-budget adventure about miniaturized scientists entering the bloodstream of a dying man. Yet beneath its pulpy surface lay one of the most prophetic scientific fantasies ever made. Directed by Richard Fleischer, it followed a team of doctors shrunk to microscopic size to perform life-saving surgery inside the human body. What seemed impossible in the 60s has now become the dream of nanotechnology medicine. Audiences adored the visual effects, but critics dismissed it as childlike. Few noticed its deeper theme, the merging of human and machine, the intrusion of technology into the most sacred space of all the body. Behind the glossy sets were real anxieties about Cold War espionage and biological experimentation. During filming, the U.S. Air Force reportedly refused to cooperate, fearing its plot echoed classified research on microscopic surveillance systems. The production itself was fraught with chaos. Actors struggled inside complex hydraulic sets meant to simulate veins and organs. Raquel Welch fainted multiple times during the jelly-like sequences. Yet, despite the difficulties, the film achieved an eerie realism that has aged remarkably well. Its scientific consultants would later inspire early discussions of nanorobots and targeted medical interventions. In 2025, the idea of navigating the human body with programmable machines is no longer fiction. What once looked like fantasy has become a medical frontier. But the film's ending carries a quiet warning. When the explorers barely escape the dying man's body, they realize that technology has entered a domain once reserved for divinity. Fantastic Voyage predicted not just medical innovation, but the moral crisis of playing creator inside creation. It foresaw a future where science could save or consume the very essence of life. Its message endures in every ethical debate about biotechnology. The greatest voyage it predicted was not through the bloodstream, but into the unknown chambers of human conscience. Number 3, 2001, A Space Odyssey, 1968. When Stanley Kubrick unveiled 2001, A Space Odyssey, audiences were divided. Some called it genius, others called it madness. Yet beneath its hypnotic silence and dazzling imagery was a vision of the future so accurate that it feels less like cinema and more like a documentary of destiny. The story traces humanity's evolution from primitive tools to artificial intelligence, culminating in HAL 9000, the computer that rebels against its creators. In the 60s, such a concept seemed philosophical. Today it feels terrifyingly familiar. Kubrick's meticulous obsession with realism bordered on prophetic madness. He consulted NASA engineers, mathematicians, and even artificial intelligence pioneers to predict what technology might look like by the next century. The rotating space station's video calls and tablet-like devices all came true. But the film's most haunting foresight was psychological, not technical. It predicted our dependence on machines, our trust in their calm voices, our willingness to surrender judgment for convenience. During production, Kubrick clashed with MGM executives who feared audiences would not understand the film. At its premiere, many walked out confused, yet others wept, sensing that something enormous had been revealed. Arthur C. Clarke's accompanying novel helped decode its mysteries, but Kubrick insisted that true understanding would only come with time. He was right. In 2025, 2001 feels more alive than ever. HAL 9000 is now seen as the ancestor of modern artificial intelligence, a being born from logic, yet corrupted by emotion. Its soft voice, its calm reasoning, its moral collapse, all mirror the dilemmas that define our century. Kubrick's masterpiece foresaw not the rise of machines, but the fall of human control. Its final image of the star child drifting through space remains cinema's most haunting question: what happens when evolution outgrows empathy? Number 2. La Jetée, 1962. Chris Marker's La Jetée is a short film composed almost entirely of still photographs, yet its impact reshaped science fiction forever. Shot on a shoestring budget, it tells of a man haunted by a childhood memory who becomes a test subject in post-apocalyptic time travel experiments. Scientists use him to reach both past and future, hoping to save humanity from extinction. But what he discovers is far more devastating. He has been chasing his own death all along. When it premiered, critics praised its artistry, but few recognized its prophetic nature. Beneath its minimalist form lay ideas that define the digital age: memory manipulation, virtual identity, and recursive time loops. In the 60s, such concepts felt surreal. Today, they describe the architecture of modern data consciousness. Marker refused commercial success. He never made a Hollywood feature and avoided interviews. Yet La Jetée inspired generations, from Terry Gilliam's 12 Monkeys to academic theories about nonlinear perception. Its imagery of fragmented memory anticipated the way humans would later live, through screens' curated moments stitched into artificial narratives. Behind the scenes, Marker built the film in near isolation, using a friend's apartment as his editing suite. He called it a photoroman, a novel told through stillness. In doing so, he predicted an entire culture of frozen images and looping memories. The film's central question remains timeless: can a memory be trusted when technology becomes the bridge between life and illusion? In 2025, La Jetée feels eerily current. Deepfake technology, virtual time capsules, and neural memory projects all echo its premise. Marker foresaw that humanity would not travel through time with machines, but through recollection itself. His short film warned that the future would not erase the past, but repeat it endlessly, until we forget which moment was real. Number 1. A Clockwork Orange, 1969. Few films shook society like Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange. Banned, censored, and condemned, it remains one of the boldest predictions of behavioral engineering and moral collapse. The film follows Alex, a young delinquent subjected to state conditioning designed to erase his violent impulses by force. What begins as punishment becomes a study of control, the destruction of free will through science. When it premiered, it triggered riots, protests, and parliamentary debates. British theaters pulled it after threats of violence. Critics accused Kubrick of glorifying cruelty, yet they missed the point. It was never about the brutality on screen, but about the system that sought to mechanize morality. In a world obsessed with order and obedience, Kubrick asked what happens when humanity becomes programmable. Behind the scenes, production was tense. Kubrick demanded total precision, forcing actors through endless takes until every gesture felt robotic by design. The result was hypnotic and horrifying. Governments across Europe banned screenings. Religious groups called it blasphemy. Yet within that chaos lay an undeniable truth. It foresaw the age of psychological manipulation, surveillance, and algorithmic behavior correction that defines 2025. Modern viewers see A Clockwork Orange not as shock art, but as prophecy. It predicted biometric control, social engineering, and digital punishment disguised as reform. Today, algorithms shape morality through metrics, likes, and reputation scores. Kubrick's nightmare has become our routine. Its final question lingers with venom: is a man still human if he cannot choose between good and evil? The film's closing image of Alex Smiling reborn into corruption stands as the perfect metaphor for modern civilization, reprogrammed yet unchanged. Kubrick did not just film the future, he diagnosed it. The 60s were not just an era of space dreams and rebellion. They were warnings disguised as fiction. Each film whispered a fragment of the world we now inhabit: digital gods, artificial minds, forgotten emotions. Which of these prophecies do you think came true the most? Let us know below, and remember to like, subscribe, and keep exploring hidden cinema.